Season 4 of Chapter 6 has just dropped and it is looking absolutely insane. But there's so much new to learn, let's get into the top 50 tips and tricks that you need to know. As I'm sure you're all aware, there are 4 new POIs this season: Ranger's Ruin, the Hive, Swarmy Stash, and the OXR HQ. On top of this, since this season is bug themed, there is so many bugs around the map. However, they only spawn at these outposts: Ranger's Ruins, the Hive, Swarmy Stash, or Demon's Debris, which used to be Demon's Domain. Now these bugs don't have much HP, however when you kill them, there's a chance they'll drop nothing, some ammo, or sometimes heals. On top of these smaller ones, there's also these mini queens. Now these have a lot more HP, however they don't actually drop you that much loot, but they do guarantee that you get a bug blaster. And at first this item might seem a bit lackluster, but we'll get into why it can be very useful later on. But first, we gotta talk about these new launch pads. Now compared to prior seasons, these new launch pads send you way higher than ever before. But if you thought this was good, you can combine this with the Fizz Berry that they just added back. Doing this sends you extremely high, and honestly, it just might be too high. It gets to the point where you're not even in render distance anymore. However, this isn't the only thing you can use to glide around the map. There's these new geysers and the POIs, and fun fact, if you go over them and get hit, you'll actually gain 30 HP from it. So keep that in mind whenever you're low. And speaking of movement, we also have Crash Pad Juniors. This is probably going to be the main form of movement during competitive matches, and again, once you mix this with the Fizz Jar, you can go a lot further. But just be careful you don't do it in the open, because if somebody has good aim, they're going to fry you. Right before we get to the big juicy tips and tricks you need to know in order to get ahead of the meta this season, we need to talk about the Mythic bosses. Now in order to activate these bosses, you need to clean up bugs around the POI. Now there's only 3 places where these Mythic bosses spawn. That would be the Hive, Demon's Debris, and Ranger's Ruin. And a little thing to help you guys out when trying to activate this boss is that if you go over to these rocks and destroy them, it will actually take a big chunk of the health bar down. So if you're trying to go quick, definitely want to make sure you get those. And if you're going to be taking down these bosses, you're going to really want to make sure you carry one of those bug blasters. Now once you activate the boss, when they spawn, there's going to be this orange bit that's glowing right under their head. This is going to be where you're going to shoot because it'll do more critical damage. Now this bug blaster has a charge effect that you can do to do more damage, or you can just shoot it repeatedly. Now in my opinion, if you're going for the boss, you can just shoot it repeatedly because charging it up doesn't do an insane amount more damage than just repeatedly shooting it. And also another thing that you could do that is really helpful is take out that minigun if you find one. This thing shoots insanely fast and you are a bit slow when carrying it. However, if you're not fighting any opponents and just going for the boss, this will help melt it really quick. So now that you got the Mythic boss at one of these POIs, what do they actually drop? Well, when you defeat the Hive Queen, you'll receive the Mythic Enhanced Wrecker Revolver and Surge Medallion. Now this medallion is insane. It increases your movement speed and gives a burst speed when sliding. So as you can see here, this mixed with all these other movements I've been talking about, you'll just go flying. Now over at Demon's Debris, you will receive the Mythic OXR Assault Rifle and Spring Leg Medallion. This gives you the ability to double jump, and when you do this, it will negate any fall damage. So keep that in mind if you're going up for height. Now last but not least, once you take down the boss at Ranger's Ruin, you'll receive the Mythic Sweeper Shotgun and Carapace Medallion. Now this medallion will give you 50 HP once you eliminate an opponent, and will also give you passive 3 shield per second, up to 50 shield, similar to what we saw last season. Now on top of getting all this loot from the bosses, they'll also drop you slurp juices. Now they'll drop you gold ones, however you can find these gold and purple ones throughout the map. And keep in mind, if you have the gold one, it will heal you for up to 200 health, however the purple just does 75. Now if you're not dropping out one of these Mythic POIs, there is still a chance that you can get extra loot, and that's because Epic has added back these gold POIs. Now these POIs have the drone crates that we saw back in chapter 4, and on top of that they also have this little capture the flag, where if you stay in here for a certain amount of time, then you'll get some loot from it. And it's also worth noting that these switch every single game, and there will only be 2 on the map at a time. Now I mentioned the bug blaster before, and it's not really the best when fighting other opponents. However, if you're fighting with a duo or a trio, it can be useful. If you charge this up all the way, it will do a massive amount of structure damage, and if you have a teammate there ready to take a wall, they can easily just take it and you can probably wipe out a duo. Now if you guys think these are pretty cool, you're just gonna have to wait for the very last tip, because it might be one of the most insane things I've ever seen in Fortnite history. By the way, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, because not many of you are, and it really helps me out. Next is going to be one of the most important things probably in this season, and that's going to be the OXR drop pods. Now these will spawn around you right after you rank up, and in them they're going to have lots of loot. Once you hit B rank, they'll finally spawn, and in it you'll get a Super Soldier ranked boon. It'll work like this: once you hit A rank, you'll get another drop with another boon that has another ability to it, and so on and so forth until you hit S+. Now these abilities are: at rank B you'll get reduced increased energy consumption when sprinting. Rank A, you'll get increased reload speed. Rank S, you'll get reduced weapon recoil and spread. And rank S plus, you'll get increased sprint speed and give you unlimited energy. And by the way, all of these stack on top of each other, so this is really broken if you can get the S plus. However, that's not the best part of it. Once you do finally reach this S plus rank, you'll get a drop pod that has one of 3 broken guns in it. The first is probably the least broken, and that's the Mythic Scar. Next is the Mythic Havoc shotgun, and keep in mind this thing can 200 pump. And last but not least is the Mythic Pulse rifle, and well, if you guys know anything about this, you'll know it's absolutely broken. And if you thought this was good, just wait till you look at the exotics. Every game there will be only 2 bunker spawns out of all of these possible locations on the map. And in order to enter them, you need to get A rank. But once you're in, you will guarantee get one of 5 exotics for free. The first is the Eradicator OXR rifle. After hitting an enemy with this, for the entire clip of the gun, you'll increasingly do damage the more you hit them. Next is the Marksman's Record revolver. Now this thing is absolutely broken. And that's because it has a really high hip fire rate and headshot multiplier. On top of this regular gun has insane range for pretty much using a shotgun. So definitely keep your eye out for this exotic version if you see it. Next is probably the one everybody's been the most excited about, and that's the double pump exotic. Now not only can you double pump if you carry both of these, but in fact it actually gives you 16 siphon per hit that you get on a player. Now most time, especially in competitive matches, you're probably not going to want to carry both shotguns, so if you drop it to your teammate and only have one, you'll get 8 siphon instead of 16. However, this thing is still really good because it's just a spaz. Last but certainly not least is very interesting, and that's the exotic Slapberry Fizz. Now if you remember the slap effect from chapter 4, this gives you an infinite amount of sprint for a couple of seconds. And mixing this with the Flowberry Fizz makes rotate so much easier. On top of this, instead of only having 100 like the regular Fizz, it has 300. Speaking of movement, we have something that's not in competitive, however it's going to help everybody else get around the map when you're playing ranked or pubs. And that's the Shockwave Launcher. This is pretty much Kit's launcher from back in chapter 2, and once you shoot it on the ground, it will give you a shockwave effect. Next but certainly not least is all the boons that you can get now. And first is very broken, that's the Storm Forecast boon. Having this boon means that the next storm circle is always revealed to you. Now it's also worth noting that this is not in competitive, so if you're a comp player, you don't have to worry about this. Next up is the Extended Magazine boon. This increases your clip size for any of your weapons, and depending on what gun you have, it varies. Last but not least is the Agile Aiming boon. While aiming down sights, your recoil and spread will be reduced and you'll maintain more of your movement speed, which is pretty similar to one of the ones in the ranked boon. Now another item that I'm pretty sure isn't in comp but would be really helpful to take down those bugs in pubs and ranked is the Swarm Strike rocket. This thing is pretty cool and it shoots out a bunch of rockets in a general area and is really good for taking down these queens. And another really cool thing about this is that if you keep ADSing and you move your crosshair, the rockets will move with your crosshair. So keep that in mind if you ever decide to use these. Now I talked about the double pump, but if you can't find that exotic and you want to go to Walmart and get one, you can use the revolver and pump. Now this obviously doesn't have the same effect, but it is still pretty much a double pump. You can use the revolver, then switch back to the pump really quick. Now talking about more stuff that's on the map, there's actually these outposts where some bugs can spawn. Now there's a couple cool things about them. Now sometimes they have bugs that spawn, but it's not all the time. But when they do, you have to clear them just like at the other boss POIs. Once you do this, you have a chance that a gold drop pod will spawn. And in these, they drop you obviously gold loot, and usually they'll give you an extra boon. Keep in mind this isn't one of the ranked boons. Also, there's a mini marketplace here in case you need some guns you need to pick up. However, if you want more options, you're gonna have to go over to the OXR HQ. This POI has a much bigger marketplace, and sometimes one of the items will be free. And finally, last but most certainly not least, we're at tip number 50. Now I'm sure many of you know that there's a rail that sends you flying over at Supernova Academy. Well, if you mix this with the Fizz, you will absolutely go flying, and mixing this with a little slide at the end sends you so far across the map. Now we've seen things kind of like this before, but nothing really to this extent with just something that's out on the map. But yeah, that was 50 season 4 tips and tricks you need to know. If you guys enjoyed this video or found it helpful and would like me to do more content like this, please leave a like and subscribe. It would really help me out. We're also extremely close to 100,000 subscribers, so it would mean the world to me if you could help me get there. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your days. Peace out.